every once in a while, you talk to someone whose story just like shakes you to the core. So, this episode, while you get tools and, practices, the depth of this story is just so unreal and so gripping. Brian's story I'm talking about. It's so fascinating and it's so healing in such a profound, inspiring way that it's one of the most profound conversations I've had in a very, very long time. I'm really I just feel really like open-hearted after this conversation, recording this little intro for you. So listen to it, reflect with it, sit with it, and just see how your body feels after you listen to this conversation. Okay, Brian, I want to use every second of this 15 minutes we have. I have so much to ask you. So earlier we were chatting, and you said that in your early recovery, you were reaching out to people. Just take me back to that time, take us all back, and what was happening, what was going on.
Yeah, so I think I became in early recovery, I became fascinated by the human mind and I wanted to learn so much so quickly. And I suppose I was thinking I've lost so much time. I lost 20 years to addiction, and maybe I wanted to make up for lost time. I think there is a little bit of a boldness in me, even as a kid growing up, and it's probably still there. I love taking a risk, taking a chance. And I got this notion I want to reach out to people further along the path. So I basically Googled the 25 most influential women in Ireland and the 25 most influential men in Ireland. And based on their names and the companies they worked for, I just cold emailed like these 50 people. So let's say, for example, Anne Herity was one of them who's become a good friend. It was A Herity at cpl.ie, Anne Herity at cpl.ie, Anne dot Herity. And I just done this with all of these people. And I had an 81% success rate.
Wow.
81% of people got back to me. It was unbelievable. And like basically this has turned into an army of mentors. Some of them have become friends. It's become a business for me because I got all of these connections and that wasn't the plan. And I think why it worked, Marina, because I wanted to know why was this so successful? And I realized I done a retrospective analysis. I put my heart on a page. I call it taking a punt. And I says, I'm a ridiculously enthusiastic learner. I'm on a mission. I'm doing a PhD in neuroscience. I want to empower young people and I want to learn from people further along the path. So I had a story, I had a mission, I piqued their curiosity. They don't get many former heroin addicts into their inbox looking to meet them for 20 minutes. And it was just an amazing experience of like one of them has become one of my best friends. And he's a multi-millionaire that I get access to his house in Portugal and stuff like that. So it's been very beneficial from that perspective. But the human connection piece has just been wonderful. And the life lesson I got from that, Marina, it's one of my biggest life lessons. Be true to your wonderfully weird self. You'll attract what you need and repel what you don't. Just be you and let the universe come towards it and see what happens. And it really worked. It was a great experience and project, I suppose you could call it.
Wow. Well, that's fascinating. And, I will admit that I have a lot. I usually don't have imposter syndrome, like if I'm just speaking, right? But if I have to
Yeah,
reach out to someone I admire, oh my God,
yeah,
I can't be my authentic self. It's really, really hard. I
yeah.
notice, like, and so I wonder how are you able to do that? Is it because you were just kind of in your mission, like just focused on that, or was it something else?
I think there was an element of naivety. I think I was naive. I often say there's a thin line between self-belief and self-delusion. I cross that line regularly. And sometimes I don't have the knowledge and I just boldly go and do stuff. But I think I've reframed a lot of stuff as well. Like I've reframed imposter syndrome. If I'm not feeling like an imposter, I'm probably in the wrong room. Like I need to be on the edge. You need to be uncomfortable. And I don't know whether I've told you about I worked with Dr. Gabor Maté recently. So I basically reached out to Gabor Maté. I had the absolute pleasure of not just meeting him, he read my book, he shared my greatest trauma with me that I was actually unaware of, and we got to do a TV documentary together. Now, I was like a little kid meeting Santa Claus when I met Gabor Maté. There was a sense of not imposter syndrome. I was like, oh my God, is this actually happening? So that was interesting. But a lesson I got in that was there was a woman called Amy Huberman, and she's a famous Irish accent actress, very famous Irish actress. And I says she was one of the 50, and I says, "Oh wow, Amy, I wasn't going to ask it." And she says, "If you don't ask, the answer is always no." And I remember thinking, oh, wow. So I was pre rejected. You don't get rejected when you ask someone and they say no. You're pre rejected until you ask, and then you give yourself a fighting chance. So I think I've reframed things and internalized things and just put myself out there. Now, I still reflexively feel that got rejected or didn't happen, didn't work out, and that reflexive feelings there, but I think the practice of that just gets easier over time.
And when you were there in this room with Gabor Maté, oh my God, I would like lose it. How did you feel? Like, were you able to be yourself, or did you feel a little bit awkward or nervous or strange?
So it was really interesting you asked that question because at the very start of the video, like the cameras were rolling and I could see him down the hallway. They wanted to like organically get the initial meeting together. So you could see I was a little bit awkward with that. And I asked Gabor, I says, how was your flight? Are you feeling rested? And he's just like, no, I feel terrible. I have jet lag. And it caught me off guard. But then he said something that was great. When you're shooting a documentary, they record it from one angle and then they get you to do the same thing again, and it's called a wide lens, a wide angle.
Mm.
So it's a bit weird because you're repeating the same thing twice. And the director asked Gabor, she says, oh, Gabor, can I get a wide angle of that now? She was apologetic nearly, and he's like, look, relax, relax. He says, I'm fully sure when I'm on my deathbed with the death cackle, the director's gonna come over and ask me for a wide angle of that. It just broke the awkwardness. And I remember we sat down. He told me then he read me book. I had no idea. Like he read me book and he inhaled it. Like he was telling me things I didn't know about my memoir, which was crazy. And he said it's a grip and read. So straight away I was like, this is amazing. But I remember sitting in front of him and there's something quite magnetic about him. They say don't meet your heroes, but like he was everything and more. You could feel the compassion, but I can't describe it. There's just this magnetism that he just draws you in with how he looks, with his voice, with his presence and his energy. And I remember just thinking to myself, right, this interview is important. This documentary is important. But this moment is really important for me. And I says, right, take a mental picture here, be present, feel it. And I purposefully made myself really present. And I'm so happy about that because I can bring myself back there where he is because I took that sort of mental, emotional snapshot of that moment, and it was the best thing I done that day.
Wow. Wow. I mean, you have that too. You just
Thank you.
have the excitement. Like, it's just very authentic. Whenever you talk, it's like, I feel like you're very connected to your truth. And maybe that's part of it too, right? Like, that becomes more important than anything else. Like, we're doing something really important right now.
Yeah, yeah. I think it is. There was a few things in recovery. Like I don't know what happened to me. Like I had a moment. It was a near death experience. 15 years of addiction, near death experience that just shook me to the core. Ended up in hospital thinking I was brain damaged, and it was like a real moment of I just can't do this anymore. But something shifted where this peace came over me. And when I landed in a detox center a couple of weeks later to get off heroin and methadone and all the different drugs, I don't know what I'd call it, like a perspective shift, dumb luck, spiritual awakening. I don't know what it was, but I felt so present. I felt so alive emotionally, psychologically. I never knew what the word spirituality was. Awareness wasn't on my radar, but it's hard to put language on it. But it was like the world glowed. And I got very interested in the human mind, but early doors, it was about spiritual experiences and nothing religious, more about the, observing the self, the ego, connection, energy, nature, all of these things. And this realization that I was a puppet of my own thoughts and my own emotions and I had no agency. And I was endlessly fascinated around this. And I suppose I became nearly a self-observation machine, constantly scanning my own inner world. And it became very important to me to, I don't like the word authentic, to just to find out who was I? Who am I? And not be pulled around by this trigger. So I think I love when people say that because I like to be me and be aligned with who I am and my truth. And whether we can answer that question, I don't know. It's the eternal question. But yeah, I think living your truth is key. It's easy. It's freeing, you know?
Wow. Yeah. What the heck landed you in that addiction?
Yeah, so that's the thing. That's what brought me to Gabor Mate's work. So I suppose I didn't realize this until it was probably 2020 when I started writing my memoir that I really went into the depths of what drove my addiction and stuff like that. And I had an operation as a baby, an infant, very young, couple of weeks old, and I had a challenge called intestinal malrotation. Basically, my intestines were twisted. And what I found out during chats with my mum and looking at research and stuff, and this is quite shocking, especially when mothers hear this. But before 1985, infants generally, most of the time, did not get a general anaesthetic when they went under the knife for surgery. So I was literally awake undergoing surgery. And I'm 48 years of age now, Marina, and I've done a lot of trauma work. I've done a lot of work on myself. But even up until 5 years ago, I couldn't put my hand on my heart. I was terrified of my own inner body from that experience. And I had to do a lot of work just to befriend my body. Even when I talk about the story, I feel a little bit of an urge to rub the scar on my belly. Like the body keeps the score, as they say, you know. And that operation, complications from that surgery, set the tone for me to be a very worrisome, afraid of my own inner body, anxious, tense child. Then my mum and dad were alcoholics, and compounding the initial trauma, I was hyper vigilant, hyper aware of everything. I knew my dad was a drink driver from early doors. I knew it was dangerous. I knew my mum was in the car. I always feared they'd never come home from the pub. And it just became this chronic anxiety, which turned into panic attacks. And then I found drugs, and I often say the doctors never gave me the anesthetic I needed as a baby. I was 14, I found drugs. When I was 16, I found an anesthetic called heroin, and that was me. That was me. It had me hooked from that very first moment.
Wow. And the moment you talked about the operation, I was like, I wonder what your environment was like because,
Mm,
if it's traumatic no matter what, but if you would have
yeah.
had an environment that was like loving and supportive and kind, I feel like it would be really different.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because my mom and dad they're so loving and they're brilliant. They really are. But their alcoholism sort of they didn't have the toolbox, the playbook. Nobody does for parenting, but they couldn't regulate their own emotions. That's why they were in addiction. They didn't know about bonding, and we're not an affectionate family. I'd be an affectionate person, but me brothers, sisters, mom and dad, we love each other clearly, but we don't hug each other. It's not what we do. It's not what we did. And then I was in an incubator for a couple of weeks, and then I was complications. I was in and out of hospital, so I was separated. There was no bond between me and any other human beings, really. So I'd say that played a role as well. And then my mom and dad would have been drinking as well. So all of these things, just perfect storm, nearly.
Compounded, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What is your relationship like with your family now?
Absolutely amazing. It's incredible. It really is. Like I often say, like I used to make my mom cry. I make her laugh today. I like to think like every Sunday I'd meet my mom for a walk in the park. It's non-negotiable. We go for a walk. My mom's 72. She loves to walk. Me dad, me dad is like he's one of the most unaware people in the world. Like in a funny way, in a funny way. If you try to have real conversations, he'd be like, "Look at that tree." He just a chant and isn't even aware he's changing the conversation. He can't go there, and God love him, he really tries. But even as a family, like me brothers and sisters, the funny thing was, like I was the one with the addiction. I was a heroin addict, and everything else was normal. But then when I was in recovery, all of a sudden the light was shone on everyone else. My brother was a cocaine addict. My other brother was an alcoholic. My sister was an alcoholic. My mom and dad were alcoholics. We were all in addiction. So it really helped the whole family to heal. And only me older brother has a problem with drink. Everyone else is in recovery within the family. And we're so close today. It's an incredible thing. It's the greatest gift I've ever been given.
Wow, that's so amazing. You're the cycle breaker of the family, and then it inspired everybody else.
Yeah, it is, and it's funny. I have a couple of people in my life, like my partner, Natalie. I think she's definitely like the generational trauma through the families, and my sister with her nephew, with my nephews and her kids as well. They're breaking the cycle and they're bringing up their kids. So we created the change,
Mm.
but now we're giving the kids and the family a whole. They don't know what it's like to even live that way, which is amazing to see that change happening.
That is. So take us back to what even motivated you to finally go into recovery. Because from my little understanding, it's like the rock bottom that you think is a rock bottom for an addict is probably not the rock bottom to get them motivated.
Yeah, funnily enough, it's interesting because when so I was a functional addict for a lot of that. Like, even though I was on a methadone program, I used to go to a clinic every week to give urines, methadone from the chemist every day, but I held down a full-time job for most of that time. And that tends to be quite regular. Lots of people think of the stereotypical addict on the street, but there's many people in the workplace holding down jobs in extreme addictions. And that was me. But in the end, I lost my job, I lost my health, I lost my relationships, everything broke down. Slowly but surely, addiction took everything away. And I was in like 50,000 euro of debt, money lenders, drug dealers, banks. The drugs weren't working anymore. I'd nowhere to turn. And I remember thinking, what am I going to do? And it was the first time in my life, like, my belief system was I can't cope with anxiety. So I fundamentally believed I needed drugs to be able to live in the world. There was no other option. So when I lost everything, I says, right, for the first time ever, I'm going to try to get drug free so I can come back and do it better and smarter. Do drugs in a smarter way. That was the plan, the delusional plan. That really was the plan. But when I had that seizure, and it was a benzodiazepine seizure I ended up nearly biting my tongue in half. I ended up in hospital, horrific experience. That shifted something inside of me where I just knew I would never do drugs again. I don't know why. I remember just lying at home. I couldn't even pick up, I was trying to pick up my phone and I couldn't hold it in my hand. Like, they said it was a very violent seizure. Like, I was close to death, and it just shook me so much, and something inside of me shifted. And I think that was the catalyst. Like, I remember I was in the hospital looking at this red fire extinguisher and I didn't know what it was. And I remember thinking, oh, what's going on? I should know what that is. And I was in the hospital and I was like, that's brain damage. That has to be brain damage. Oh my God. And I remember having this moment. I can't fight this anymore. I can't do this anymore, between the trauma, the addiction, the grind of addiction, the seizure, now brain damage. I'd no more fight. I'd nothing left to give. And I remember lying down on the trolley in the hospital, waving the white flag. I'm done. I give up. And there was that sense of peace. That's when I felt that sense of peace. And what I've retrospectively realized, that was the first time in my life I stopped fighting anxiety. I stopped fighting with my own mind. I stopped resisting reality. It was a moment of surrender, letting go, acceptance, all of the above. And I believe that was the catalyst for change. And then over the following weeks, when I went into detox, I had that kind of an awakening experience, hard to put words on it. And the motivation came from that, because I remember when I was in detox, then all of a sudden, it was like I put my dopamine hooks from drugs into education. Like, in the midst of a detox, I wanted to learn so much. I start reading books about self-awareness, psychology. I start meditating. I start talking about my emotions for the first time in my life, 35 years of age. And there was this freedom and this energy and this, oh my God, I can't believe this life is possible for me. I was being given a second chance at life. and I took it with both hands. So I suppose the motivation came from a love of something new. I spoke to a really good mentor of mine who was a brilliant therapist, and she says I was starting to fulfill my basic needs, which was I was starting to be seen again. I was learning again. I was coming alive again. So it was like she reckons it was the perfect storm of all of these basic needs that were taken away from me from addiction. And now all of a sudden they were culminating in a moment where I could go in a different direction. And like motivation seems like an underwhelming term for it. Like I was so driven to learn, nearly in an unhealthy way. But it gave me time. It was a healthy obsession that gave me time to heal because it did take a couple of years to heal, to be quite honest.
I'm sure. Oh,
Still doing
wow.
it
Of course, for a lifetime. I really
for a
resonate
lifetime.
with that. I resonate, like, I'm Ukrainian Jewish, and I grew up like
Yeah, you said.
so obsessed. I mean, with learning and like education.
Yeah,
And I feel like that's never leaving. So it's just being channeled into like growth and learning that
yeah.
kind of stuff because, yeah, that was very heady. That was very heady. And now
Mm,
I teach and I study somatics. So yeah, it's funny. Um, so talk to us about surrender because for me also like growing up, I used to think it's a terrible thing. It means you're giving up. It
mm,
means you're losing. And you said I
yeah,
waved the white flag, right? And I think for especially for men, I'm very passionate about men healing. I think
yeah.
it's like it needs to happen ASAP, you know. What is surrender?
Yeah, and I think this is where people get mixed up, like vulnerability, surrender, acceptance. They all seem like passive terms. But for me, surrendering to what is. I remember I was a huge fan, still am, of Eckhart Tolle's work. It really spoke to me in the early days. Anthony de Mello and Eckhart Tolle's work were the first books I read. And I remember Eckhart Tolle saying, what is. Like, that's such a simple thing. What is. Yet we resist what is. So surrendering really is acknowledging and accepting the reality of what's going on right now. And the reason why it's not passive, like imagine you're stuck in the mud. You don't surrender and stick in the mud and stay stuck in the mud. You surrender, right? I'm stuck. What can I do about this? How can I actively change this situation if the situation needs to be changed? So I think when I think of surrender, I'm actually surrendering to the reality of the situation, which doesn't mean I can't change it. It means I'm accepting everything that is happening right now in this moment, and then I can do something about it. Now, that's probably a layered, I think surrender is layered in many ways. Another word I think about when I think of surrendering, and it's linked to this as well, it's like a softness. So if you're not surrendering, you're gripping. It's nearly the opposite of surrender. You're gripping onto something. And if you're gripping onto something really tight, it feels tense, it feels anxious. So a surrendering is like a softening and a letting go. And you can just, it creates space. I think that's the thing. It creates a space to take the correct action. And I think that's really important around the word surrender.
How were you gripping before?
Oh, gripping. My anxiety lived in my chest. That's really where it lived. And to talk about gripping, like I remember I used to drive to work, and when I'd get to work, the steering wheel where my hands were would be there'd be sweat underneath my hands because I'd be gripping the steering wheel so hard, like
Literally
physically gripping,
gripping.
literally gripping. But what I was really doing, I wasn't really gripping the steering wheel hard. The gripping was nearly with my chest, so I was like in like this, so my whole chest was all tense because I was trying not to feel my heart beat, my chest, my pulse. I developed a phobic fear of all of these things. So I was always tense and gripping, and there was no softness, there was no surrender, there was no letting go, there was no ease or freedom in my life. It was all push and tense tension that was there. And yeah, it's a constant practice. Like I think with the world we live in today, like there's this evolutionary mismatch, which is something I'm fascinated by at the moment. Like our bodies and brains were not built to live in this world. Like we evolved to spend time in nature, to walk, to hunt, to move, to connect in tribes. Whereas we're looking at our phones, we're reacting to certain challenges of the world. Like we're not built to see all these wars go on all the time and all of this pain as well. So this creates this like societal tension that's there as well. And I think this is something important. We have to ruthlessly practice the opposite of where the world is pulling us towards.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, I've been having a very intense awakening around the war stuff. Ukraine,
I
Israel,
can
the
imagine.
US. I mean, 2 years ago. Yeah, yeah. It was really intense. It was a lot. It's very difficult to, like you were speaking about basic needs, right? I think that it's
Yeah.
very difficult to heal and to thrive if our basic needs are not met. So unfortunately, I was like all constantly, checking what's going on. And when I lived in Israel, so I grew up in Israel, I was very active in the peace movement and I was facilitating dialogue. And I just like had to stop, dialogue between Israelis and Palestinians. And I had to stop
Yeah.
like all like reading all the news and all this stuff because it was affecting me so intensely.
I can imagine.
Yeah. How
Yeah.
how do you okay, I'm sure that you still have anxiety because you're a human being.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times when we talk about healing, there's kind of like a feeling of like before and after. And now I just live this perfect life and I don't have any bad thoughts and all my emotions are very positive, right? And so, like, can you talk about today how do you approach this in a different way than before?
Yeah, I think the difference is how I experience and relate to anxiety as well. Like obviously there's the psychological and the mental element. So I've reframed what that is. But there's also the somatic element as well, where I have an ability to sit with it. And I think that's really important. But like I put down changing my relationship with anxiety as the catalyst for all of the other good things that come into my life because that allowed space for me to connect with myself. Now, as you said, of course I still get anxious. I hope I get anxious. Like if I'm walking down the street and someone tries to mug me, I want the stress response and the anxiety response to kick in. Otherwise, I might be dead very soon. It's like it's a survival mechanism, but it's just information, it's just data, it's just signposting our values. And I think that's something I really live strongly by as well. I have a very core set of values and principles that I live by. My health is important, my relationship is important, my energy is important, boldness, inner peace. These are things that are really important to me. And if I'm not aligned with them, and let's say if I'm working 70 hours a week and I'm drained, but I value energy and relationships, but I haven't got time for either, I'm going to feel friction. So the anxiety and the stress of that brings me back into alignment. So I think it's just information. It's signaling to say maybe you're overloaded, maybe you're in danger, maybe you're not safe. But then surrender to that. It's back to that surrender piece, right? I need to surrender to that and recognize that, feel the anxiety and let it go. Now, for me, something that I actively practice and it works, different things work for different people. In the early days of my recovery, when I was really more aligned with spiritual practices, and I think I internalized this process. It was like I became a self observation machine. And this was really built on Eckhart Tolle's work. Just observe the self, the thoughts, the bodily sensations. And I remember I used to just observe the anxiety where it is. Oh, it's up in my brow. It's a little bit in the back of my head and the tension. And I tried to sit with those emotions. And I tried to have one eye on what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, bodily sensations, and that became a huge practice for me. But I think I nearly internalized that process. And I always have one eye on my body and mind, which really helps. That creates the awareness and that ability to catch and sit with the challenges.
Hello there. Thank you so much for watching, for being here. I appreciate you so much. And if you can just take one little moment and help me make this podcast a success and support us, please just subscribe to my channel, like this video, and leave me a little comment. I want to hear from you. How's this landing for you? Is this interesting? What are you learning? What are your takeaways? Again, thank you for being here. I love you, and let's get back into it.
But then I think over time, breath work has become really powerful for me, because if you look at the science of breath work, we can change the ratio of the in breath to the out breath, have a longer out breath. And when you do this, you can slow down your heart rate. I actually work with a young pro golfer over here in Ireland, and we brought him into the neuroscience lab and looked at his brain activity slowing down during certain breathing techniques. His heart rate slowed down. So this gives me objective evidence that I can actually slow down my heart rate, which is the biological component of anxiety and stress. So for me, the anxiety comes, but I have a tool that I can utilize, reduce my heart rate, and it sort of calms the anxiety down. But what that has done from a psychological perspective is the belief has changed. So whereas my belief was I can't cope with anxiety and the consequence was taking drugs, my belief now is, oh, there's anxiety. I'm going to breathe and it's going to dissipate and I'm going to get stronger as a result. And that's what I do. And it was that process, Marina, that gave me a philosophy of living in life, that the challenges of life, what give us the fuel to learn and grow. We learn very little from success. So I've learned now, right? I need to create boundaries for difficult relationships, because that's the challenge. What's the solution based on the challenge? So it's given me a whole mindset around dealing with things. And then all of these things compound and you reduce the stressors, you change your environment, there's less anxiety, and it's a compounding thing in a different direction. But you need to give it time. That's where you need to act, you need to do it, and you need to give it time. But it can be, the changes can be so big over time. They really can.
Wow, brilliant. So, do you feel like it's that, like, for me, it's like the actual fear of the anxiety is the issue rather than the anxiety itself, is what I'm hearing you kind of say. And then,
Yeah.
right? And then paying attention to our beliefs around the anxiety and then the breath work in it. And also then taking it seriously. Like it's telling you something, it's showing you
Yeah.
something about your life. Could be an actual threat. So thank goodness it's showing up. I always tell my students that, like, we don't want to never be in fight, flight, freeze, even fawn and fix. Like these are good things. These are important. It's just a
Yeah.
discernment of it. And like and the situation around it, right? So what type of breath work would you suggest for someone to practice? And is this right when they have anxiety? Is this like first thing in the morning? Like what would you say to that?
Yeah, so there's multiple factors there. So, like, if you get the best breathwork technique and you learn about it and you study the science, and then you wait for a couple of years for a panic attack to arise and try to implement that technique, it's not gonna work. It's just not gonna work. You will be overwhelmed by your biological systems. So it's definitely a compounding factor. Now, there's multiple different breathwork techniques, and what I say to people is, whatever feels most comfortable with you. In other words, what will you be most willing to practice? What makes less friction and easier for you to do? Hold onto that dearly. For me, the longer out breath compared to the in breath is key. And usually I just go 4 seconds in through the nose, 6 seconds out through the mouth. Now, what I do as well is every day when I wake up, this is non-negotiable for me. For 1 minute, I take six of those breaths. So that's 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out, 10 seconds per breath, six of them, 1 minute. And while that brings an element of calm, like it doesn't make me zen, and it's 1 minute, it's not going to regulate my whole nervous system. But it's a reminder and a primer for me that I have this superpower in my back pocket that I can use when challenges arise. So I try to keep things simple because life is busy enough. So 1 minute in the morning, and then when the challenges arise. Now, that isn't to say I find it much easier if I'm going to do a big talk with 1,000 people. I know I'm going to get anxiety, and it's much easier. But if I go into my parents and my dad starts an argument about politics, you might grab me in, I'll get anxious and I'll emotionally react. But the more you practice these things over time, you remember you have these tools in your locker. And that's what I have found has happened with me. So what I would say to people is, whether it's box breathing, whether it's the physiological sigh, which the research shows is the best tool in real time to reduce stress and anxiety. So the physiological sigh is just, and it feels good. What's really interesting is that used to be my go-to. But when I deliver this in talks and workshops, it was a bit harder to explain the physiological side. And then I was working with a couple of sports people. At Max, the golfer, he wasn't going to be doing the on the golf course, and it says it's much easier to hide the 4 seconds in, the 6 seconds out. And funnily enough, just by teaching that, that became my default. So it must just align better with me. It's just easier to implement than even waking up in the morning instead of my partner hearing me. It's just easier to do the 4 seconds in and the 6 seconds out. So whatever works for you. My advice for anybody, there's two things I say if you want to implement changes in your life. Baby steps, give it time, take baby steps and make it simple and easy. Reduce the friction as much as you can. And I think the best way of doing that is doing something that feels doable. If you're trying to if you hate running and you're trying to implement a running routine, it's not gonna last. It's not gonna last.
Yeah, I love that advice. So I feel like so far we were talking about self-regulation. And before we recorded, you were talking about the importance of connection. And I think that is crucial. And in the really hard times in my life, the last 2 years,
Mm.
where I did all well, sometimes I would forget self-regulation, I'm not gonna lie. But in those moments you're just like, ah. But what
Yeah,
really saved my life is connection and co-regulation. Truly, like I couldn't have made it without it. And so can you
yeah.
talk about the importance of that?
Yeah, so this has become a huge element of my life. I think it's like the paradox of success in a way as well. I remember being told about that concept, and it's like the more success you have, the more shiny opportunities come your way. And when I had the book, I had the documentary, and I had my own podcast, and loads of good things were coming into my life, and I was getting loads of opportunities. But I found myself on the back of that. I was saying yes to something, a meeting for a workshop opportunity. And if I rate it on a scale, if I rated that on a scale of 1 to 10, that's a 7 out of 10. Oh, I'll go to that other meeting. Oh, that's an 8 out of 10. Yeah, I'll go to that meeting as well. But what I didn't realize I was doing was I was having less time for loved ones, family, who are 10 out of 10. So I was getting busy. I was disconnecting from other people. But I think what I really realized was I was disconnecting from myself. Yes, I still had my breathwork technique, but I probably wasn't exercising as much. I certainly wasn't going out in nature as much. And I was losing my grip on my spirituality to an extent. Like I remember I'd hear the wind less often. I would hear nature less often. I would be thinking too much rather than actually just feeling. And I remember I had this realization that, oh my God, I need to reconnect with myself. And if I reconnect with myself, I will reconnect better with other people. And this has been a huge element of my life this year. So I'm probably busier than I've ever been in terms of the amount of things coming to me. But I'm saying no to so many more things so I can create that space for myself so I'm connected with myself, which delivers the connection with other people. And something you said there, Marina, it just keeps on coming back to me again and again. So I had a guy called Peter McFerry on the podcast, and in Ireland, he's like a legend for people with addiction issues, homelessness issues. He has helped thousands and thousands of people. He was a Jesuit priest, actually, and he's helped thousands of people. And I had him on my podcast there recently, and I says, what is the one thing you've noticed generalizing that helps people more than anything else? And he says that they have someone else to lean on. When people haven't got someone to lean on, it is nearly impossible. So I think that connection with other people and creating that space, rootlessly seeking that connection, but with yourself and with others as well. Because if you're just connecting with other people, but you haven't got any time for yourself, well, what is that connection going to be like with them other people? You're going to be thinking, you're not going to be present while you're actually there. And I think that sort of call to action for me was like I spend more time with my dog and my little puppy, and I nearly live through the puppy's eyes. I'm in the park and I'm saying, what's Lily hearing? What's she seeing? She's hearing the wind, and she's like me little Zen master walking around the park, and it's like a great spiritual practice. But it's brought more peace, it's calmed me down, and it has allowed me to even prioritize what's important in my life. And it's not a meeting that's a 7 out of 10. it's the loved ones in my life that I need to create more time for.
Wow, that's so powerful. I feel the same. I'm like, I want to be my dog. Can I just be her? um,
That's
how do
the
you,
dream.
yeah, totally. How do you decide what to say no to?
Oh, there's a couple of things with that. I'm an innate people pleaser, so I like to be a nice person, and that can result in people pleasing. So I think if you're a people pleaser, you need to get even more rigid with this. And rigid is never usually a good thing, but I think some things you need to get pretty tight with. And it was the same guy, a guy called Greg McKeown. He wrote a book called Essentialism, and he told me about the paradox of success. And he says, the more success you have, the more opportunities you have, and the better you'll have to get at saying no. And he said a line to me that I thought was brilliant. Saying no is like trading popularity for respect. You won't be popular, but people will respect you. And when people come back to me and say, look, I'm love to, but I'm really maxed out and I'm really focused on this project, I'm afraid I have to take a no. I walk away saying, ah, that's a shame, but wow, they're going in a good direction. They have it nailed. I respect them for that, you know. So I think the biggest thing for me was to recognize if I say yes to that thing, I'm saying no to something else. And that's been the biggest tool for me. So what are my priorities? We've only 24 hours in the day. Know your priorities and have a realistic mindset. Have a realistic mindset in terms of where you can actually put your time. And that's been one of the best ways that I've done it. And I think there's a couple of I've sort of studied the art of saying no gracefully as well. And I'm probably anyone listening, I'm giving away a couple of me tools when I say no to them. But like a great thing, if your default is yes, love to do that, love to go for a coffee, and you're like, oh my God, I haven't got the time. Well, just let your default be, oh, let me get back to you. I just have to check my calendar. So it's so simple, but it creates a little bit of space where you have time to reflect thoughtfully on the right thing to do. And again, think about your values. Like if you value nature, connection, and health, that's where you need to be spending some of your time. Now, alternatively, if you value boldness, drive, and ambition, and you want to own a company, well, then your priorities shift. And maybe you do say no to meeting your brother at the weekend and you work the weekend. It really depends on your values. But if you want to say no to people, the calendar one is great. But there's a little triad that I found works really well. And this is studying the art of no from other no proponents over time. And the first one is show them that you've thought about it carefully and do it like in a real way. I wouldn't do it like as if you're pretending to do it. But if somebody gives you an opportunity, I say to meet you for a coffee, say, look, I'd love to go for a coffee. Sounds like it'd be a great chat. We've had great times before, but I can't. And just show them you didn't just dismiss it, you thought about it. The second one is show them that you're grateful. Say, look, I'm really appreciate it. Maybe we can do it another time. I would have loved to go, but thank you for the ask. But then the third one is you're not saying no to them, you're saying no to everybody. So make it a policy. Say, really, really sorry, but I'm having a blanket no to all coffee breaks at the moment because I'm really busy with this other project. I'm maxed out right now. So all of a sudden, you're being thoughtful, you're being grateful, and you have a policy. So you're not saying no to them, you're saying no to everybody, and then they don't feel rejected. And it just eases it, especially for people pleasers who want everyone to feel good.
I love that. Thank you. I love that. That's beautiful. I also kind of tend to feel into, like what my body kind of says. Like, is this exciting to me? If it's somebody I don't know.
Mm,
Yeah. So
yeah.
yeah, but I love those. Okay, we have a little bit of time and I really want to ask you about, do you think anyone can heal? Like even this person on the street that's like looks awful and you're like, ah, do you believe anyone can heal?
So so my partner in crime in the world of addiction was a lovely guy called Rory. He was my best mate going back in that time, and Rory is still in the depths of addiction. I'm drug free over 12 years now. So he has had another 12 years on top of where I was, and he is in deep. He's been to jail several times. He's in a really bad place, and I thought there was no hope for Rory. I really did. But I asked that guy, Peter McFerry, and I says, like, is there hope for people at the very bottom, like where it seems like there's no hope? And he says there's always hope. There is always hope. He's seen examples of that over time. But what I would say is, and I think the caveat with that is what we call healing. I don't think people can heal 100%. Like, I will never have the Zen of the Dalai Lama. And that is simply based on the traumas and the challenges I have faced in my life. Like, the Dalai Lama reaches bliss and rapture in a state of meditation through the practice over years. He hasn't been traumatized. He hasn't got a body that's trying to protect itself and go into hypervigilant mode, because the brain doesn't forget. The brain always remembers. So while everyone has a chance to heal to some extent, I do believe the intensity of your trauma determines the depth of the healing to a certain extent. But I think anyone can get to 90%, but that last 10% is on a scale where I don't know. For myself, maybe I'm at, maybe there's another 4 or 5% to go, but I probably won't even get there now. Like, I've done all I can, but there's still a little bit of a tension around the scar. I'll never be able to enjoy listening to me heartbeat. Maybe I will, but I think it would be a lot of work, an awful lot of work to really intensely create that healing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's okay too to have like a little bit of, it would be
Yeah.
boring if we just got there. I think so.
This is the thing, Marina. There's another thing that I'm so excited to talk about always. It's like the greatest gifts. One of the greatest gifts I've ever been given has been the trauma and the addiction, because it has given me the joy, the awareness, the mindset that I have today. It's been a gift. And there's this concept. Do you ever hear this concept called the other self? I only heard about it recently. My podcast is called Change is Possible. So basically, I bring people on with stories of huge change. And I used to say my addiction was a gift because of what it gave me. There was a young guy called Jack Kavanagh, broke his neck, and from the neck down all the way when he was 20 years of age. He's been in a wheelchair since. And he told me about this idea of the other self. And it's a part of yourself that comes out only when you are faced with the greatest challenges. It's something that never would have arisen only for the challenges. And Jack says he would not change him breaking his neck at 20 years of age. He's now 31, because it has given him so much. And I had another guy in a fella called Ryan Curtis, who also broke his neck, paralyzed. Now he can walk a little bit again. And he said the exact same thing. I had a cancer survivor said the exact same thing. The challenge gave them so much. So that other self, and I think that's something that's really important for people to recognize. And it doesn't, like, some people crumble and they don't get that other self, but it's in everybody. It is in everybody. And I think the gift of life's challenges really is within that.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, that's powerful. Is there anything else you feel like you want to share in the next 5 minutes?
God, we really did cover a lot of topics in that short amount of
That tends
time.
to happen here. Well, you were speaking about the importance for you for with working with people in prisons. I don't know if you want to mention
Yeah.
anything around that.
Yeah, I think one little story from a prison. Like, I've done the documentary on addiction, and I think prison is like, people are misunderstood about what addiction is. They believe it's a bad choice and stuff like that. But I've done work in prisons, and what I've seen with people in prisons, that's been lots of trauma. There's been lots of challenges in their lives, and nearly violence or drug addiction. It became a currency that helped them to survive in some kind of a way. And I think when people see the human side of that, because I was in doing a workshop in a prison in Ireland, and the guy heard me talking about my addiction and my trauma, saying that addiction was just a symptom of an underlying problem, which was anxiety, trauma, and panic attacks. And he says he never spoke at these groups before, and I could see him getting agitated and anxious and nervous. And this guy was like big, dangerous, like someone you say, "Whoa, don't cross him on the street. He's a scary looking guy," and probably the bravado to go with it. So it was hard for him to share this. But he turned around and he says, "Look, uh, I've done a lot of bad things in my life, and I used to think I was a bad person and an evil person." He says, "But when I was 9 years of age, my ma committed suicide, and me and my little brother spent 2 days with our body in the house. So maybe that created something, that maybe that's why I am the way I am." And then it turned out that his dad was in jail for murder. When he got out of jail, he got murdered, and the whole family were in drug addiction and violence. So he thought he was an evil person for doing bad things when it was absolutely inevitable that's what was going to happen. Like there was 95% chance he was going to go down that road. So I'm very passionate about sort of helping people to understand, to see the human behind people, and that's really, really important. And one other thing I'd love to just mention as well, it's something that's on my mind recently, and I get a lot of podcasts coming to me, and a question, and they say is, what advice would you give to yourself that was suffering, or what advice would you give to someone that's really, really stuck? And I never had good advice because I wouldn't have listened to anybody. And I think when someone's really, really stuck, there's no whisper or one word or one mantra or line that's going to help them. So what I would say to other people is think about someone in your life that is stuck or that might be stuck, and go and sincerely ask them how they are. Do they need a bit of help? Because I think that's the thing. That's that human connection in action, where you can give someone the shoulder that they can lean on to give them the opportunity and the plant the seed of them potentially getting unstuck.
That's beautiful. Yeah. We have very little time left, but I have to share with you. Last year, I had a crazy thing happen to me where I actually met a guy who was homeless and a drug addict on the street. And he
Wow.
did end up in jail, but we had such a connection, and we were connected for a
Wow.
long time, and we fell in love.
Wow.
It like
Amazing.
it changed so I mean, it's a whole thing, but it opened me up a
Yeah.
lot to spirituality.
Okay. That's incredible. And
Yeah.
what was your biggest learning, Marina, from that?
Ugh. Um, Honestly, I think it was more about I can't save anybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that has been my pattern, you know?
Yeah.
And just allowing like, okay, he has his own journey and there's nothing I
Yeah.
can do but like feel the compassion and send the love and send the
Mm,
love every day to this person, but he's not in my life directly. So that
yeah.
but also he was very spiritual and he connected me to my own spirituality and
Yeah.
my own like trust and belief.
Yeah. I can 100% believe that the depth of his soul knows that if he changes, and if he does go and try to help himself, that you'll be there as well. Like
Yeah.
it's that seed that's being planted so deeply, and it's probably not mentally known. I think people in addiction struggle with that. They can't really see the reality of those kinds of things, but like something deeper always knows that. So that's a beautiful thing, and that's a powerful lesson. That's one of the greatest lessons. It's the question I get most of people in my talks, and it's mothers suffering with kids in addiction or loved ones in addiction. You can't save everybody. You can only change yourself. That's all you can do.
Exactly, exactly. And you know
Yeah,
how like our lesson, this is what I believe. We all have like those big kind of like umbrella lessons that repeat, and that was like
yeah,
the deepest repetition of that was the biggest
right.
iteration because I was
Yeah,
so desperate, I was so it was the greatest love I've ever experienced. But I had to
wow.
walk away from it and just trust that this person, has his own journey.
Finds their own way.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Well,
Amazing
thank
story.
you so much for all the
Thank you for
stories and
having me.
all the wow, wow. I mean, this is one of the best conversations I've had in a long, long time. And we're gonna definitely link your socials and everything. Is there anything you're working on right now that you want people to know about?
God, no. I suppose the big thing, the big passion project for me at the moment is my own podcast. So it's only 16 episodes in, and it's flying at, yeah,
Oh,
it's brand new. I only started in September, and it's flying. It really is. I'm hoping, because I'm hoping to be over in the US actually at some stage to do a couple of podcasts. So maybe the paths the world will align in that way, Marina.
would
But
love
I'm
that.
hoping to get a Laura Clary on the podcast. So I was in contact with our team and stuff like that. And Dr. Anna Lemke has a new book coming out called Radical Surrender. So I would
Mm.
love to go. I've pals with Anna, and she says we're going to go for a hike together over in California where she lives. So I'm hoping to do a podcast over there at some stage as well. So
You
it's all
have to
about the
tell
podcast
me.
at the
Well,
moment.
you have to tell me because I don't live here full time. I live in Costa Rica, but I would fly
You
here
yeah.
to meet up for sure.
Well, definitely. I'll let you know when that happens, Marina.
Yes. Brian, thank you so, so, so much. This was incredible.
Likewise, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.